Hey, good afternoon to you. 507 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can help us, as always, by doing that at calling 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Thanks for all of your great calls today. We've got a story about China's influence in the United States. Of course, we've been tracking this at length over these last few years. And the latest is, as we've talked about for a couple weeks now, that there are a number of Chinese Communist Party service centers that are apparently operating all across the United States. Yes, the Chinese government has found all sorts of ways to infiltrate our country. That's one of them. The reason we know about this is the reporting of our next guest, and it's definitely caught the attention of some United States senators as well. Philip Lenczycki joins us now. He's an investigative reporter for the Daily Caller News Foundation. Philip, great to have you back, sir.
Hey, Vince, how you doing today?
I'm doing very, very well. You and I spoke not long ago about these so-called service centers that the Chi-Coms have set up in the United States. If you could, just refresh the audience's memory here of what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So the quick recap here is that beginning in 2014, the Chinese Communist Party began to set up in total 60 what are called overseas Chinese service centers around the world. And at least 7 of them are located in major American cities. And so, for example, San Francisco, Houston, Omaha, St. Louis, and so forth. What we found is not only are these overseas Chinese service centers, are they not only run by a Chinese Communist Party intelligence service, which is called the United Front Work Department, but that in 2018, representatives from each and every one of the 7 U.S. centers traveled to China for a work conference, and there they met with officers from China's Ministry of Public Security. So this is the equivalent of their FBI, and our FBI has accused this Ministry of Public Security of being the motivating force behind the transnational repression schemes and other types of activities that the New York overseas Chinese police station engaged in.
Right. So, in other words, these are not merely consulates or embassies of the Chinese government. These are full-blown intelligence gathering and Communist Party law enforcement arms.
Well, from the looks of it, you might say that. For sure, they're being run by this intelligence service, and for sure, they are communicating and meeting with this other, security arm to discuss how to do international law enforcement.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously, you're reporting important. It's my understanding now is that it has caught the attention of a number of Republican senators who are seeking more answers now on what the heck is going on in our country. What can you tell us there?
Yeah, this is interesting. So after our story came out a couple weeks ago or so, we began to hear from folks across the United States telling us that they had reached out to the FBI and whatnot, trying to understand what was known. The first thing that actually occurred was that Attorney General from Missouri, Andrew Bailey, he announced that his office would actually launch a formal investigation into the St. Louis Overseas Chinese Service Center. And this was after Representative Wagner there in Missouri sort of brought the matter to his attention. And then yesterday, a big change occurred. We had 2 letters sent from GOP senators. So in total, 14 senators. The first letter was sent to the Department of Justice asking for some answers about the nature of these service centers. And the second letter was sent to both the Department of Justice and the FBI calling for a full-blown investigation.
Okay, so they're asking simply American intelligence agencies, the Justice Department, the FBI specifically, look into this and then tell us what you know?
That's correct. They're trying to determine are there additional sites have these sites committed any type of illegal activity? And they're also asking, how can it be that this information is available in open source and that up until now you've done nothing?
I do see a number of letters have been sent here, signed by any number of senators. An interesting group of people here. Everyone from Marsha Blackburn to John Cornyn, Deb Fisher, Bill Haggerty, Ted Cruz. You also have Ted Budd, Josh Hawley, and Mitt Romney, Mike Lee, John Cornyn. Just a lot of senators here who are very concerned, and thank goodness, about the presence of the Chinese Communist Party in these 7 locations around the country. Do you have any sense at this moment whether or not the Justice Department or the FBI does intend to, answer some of these questions?
I am not privy to that. I think what's really interesting, and this is totally coincidence actually, is that tomorrow the House Judiciary is going to have a chance to ask FBI Director Wray some questions, and
yes.
It might be interesting if anyone in that group decides to raise this matter.
Do you have any reason to believe they will?
No, I've not been told that anyone will, no.
Oh, okay. Well, one hopes this comes up.
Yeah, I would just add that, there are definitely representatives on the House Judiciary from affected states. So you'd hope that they would take some interest in this. Sure.
In other words, that they would do they would protect their constituents by finding out what's actually happening within their state's borders. That would be well advised. I want to move to a different topic on China now. I know you have extensive reporting, of course, on what's going on in China. That's your beat. That's your area of coverage. I saw you did a report in the last 24 hours about how the Chinese military is now training kindergartners in the country to basically prepare them for combat. What is happening? I mean, it sounds like a crazy story, but what is going on with the kindergarten commies?
It's almost impossible to believe. You got to see the photos. You got to see the footage to really get a sense of what's going on. But essentially, what's going on is that they have something called National Defense Education, and this has, of course, been stepped up under Xi Jinping, and they have instructed these schools to increase patriotic education and increase activities that go over some of the painful points in history that they've endured, according to the national narrative. And apparently, as an outgrowth of this, these schools are now being visited by soldiers from the People's Liberation Army. They're having as many as week-long boot camps this summer. We're seeing dozens and dozens of these. It's definitely not every kindergarten, but it looks like these schools are getting some type of governmental kudos for running these.
Uh-huh.
And you're seeing these kids that are decked out in full camouflage fatigues, going through what is basic training more or less, and then getting some type of exposure to just a really wacky and kind of terrifying array of toy weapons.
Yeah. I can't help but notice the juxtaposition between our country and theirs. So while our kids are getting drag queen story hours, their kids are getting combat training. Do I understand that correctly?
That's what I'm led to believe is occurring, yes. I mean, what do you make of this? Do you think that this is just naturally occurring, or do you think that there's something else going on? Because this seems almost like a commie's wet dream here.
Yeah, big time. I mean, you can't help but notice that the Chinese routinely are using our own social insanity against us, right? So when they meet with Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, in this infamous meeting, and they say, don't you lecture us about human rights violations. You are genociding black people in the United States of America. And Antony Blinken and company, they fall for this crap. I think the Chinese, I mean, you are an expert much more so than I am in this subject. I think they've got our number. They realize that we are paralyzed by this domestic stupidity. Meanwhile, they're putting their kindergartners through training, as you report, that includes giving them experience with how to handle knives, rifles, grenades, and shoulder-fire missiles. This is we're heading in the wrong direction, I think, Philip.
You got it. And something that I want to underscore is it's not that's already horrifying enough, but they're also exposing them to propaganda films and really trying to what appears inculcate them to what I would call an indifference or maybe even a joy in that type of violence. And so I definitely encourage everyone to hop on over to the Daily Caller or to my Twitter and to check out some of these clips, because we don't have an equivalent children's show that contains this type of wanton violence and packages it in computer animated graphics.
No, not at all. So, tell me something, Philip. There was a time ago, I remember a couple years ago, American conservatives became aware of a Chinese expression about the stupidity of American liberals called baisaw. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Baisaw, yeah.
What does that mean? Being a guy, I know you speak Mandarin and you've been studying all this. What does that term mean?
That's funny that you bring that up. It literally means bai is white and soy is left. So it literally just means, white leftist. And it's an idea, just as you're alluding to a moment ago, that they have our number. They understand this sort of reflexive type of, what else do you call it, but weakness.
Yes.
It's sort of a pathological altruism or something like that. You give it your own name, please. But, they understand that, and it disgusts them. And so you'll read, you're making me remember all this funny stuff from years ago. But, you read on these forums, just torching our politicians. And so, if you recall, right when, the Biden administration picked up the torch, Anthony Blinken met with his Chinese counterparts, and they were, berating him about Black Lives Matter and so on and so forth. And they get it. They understand that there is no defense that the left has to this type of criticism. They know that the left can only use this on the right, and that's about all it's good for. But that's the term, and it's derogatory.
It seems apropos, unfortunately. Derogatory. That's the word for it. Lastly, Philip, because we have a lot of breaking news in the last 24 hours, and I know you've written about some of this, about Hunter Biden, and particularly this man, Gal Luft, who is a longtime Washington area think tanker. He says he's got all sorts of information about Hunter Biden. He's been saying this for some time. He tried to turn it over to the government. Now he's been hit with a range of felonies yesterday by the United States Department of Justice. They are saying that he failed to register under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Gal Luft worked for CEFC China Energies, the same company that Hunter Biden worked for. Look at these comparisons. What do you make of this, that he's being charged with a FARA violation, but Hunter Biden has not been charged with any such thing?
I would start by saying, the Foreign Agents Registration Act is a tool in our belt that we should use more. It seems like there's a lot of folks that are violating this. So let me just lead with that.
Yeah.
But the fact that the one individual is being charged with a violation of it, while the other openly or rather we now know through seeing his messages with Tony Bobolinsky that he was trying to figure out a way to, I suppose, evade some type of registration, referring to Hunter Biden. You can't help but wonder what's going on at the Justice Department and if there's some type of, selective, application of this law. But without knowing everything about the yesterday's indictment, all I can say is, if you're working with Chinese espionage and trying to encourage what it looks to be some type of high-ranking U.S. officials, potentially former CIA officers that have the president-elect's ear, to be sympathetic to China. I'm not in favor of that.
It's just crazy what's going on. Philip Lenczycki, thank you for being at the forefront of digging into it, and always good to talk to you, sir. Thank you. Yeah, Philip Lenczycki is great, isn't he? He speaks fluent Mandarin. He's spent a bunch of time in China. He's been digging into them for years. And his reporting is just fantastic. I'm glad he caught the attention of all these United States senators, and they're demanding some answers. Let's hope they get them, because China is really, aren't they the beneficiary of all of our insanity? So all of this, the stupidity, the left advancing, bigotry and division in the United States, only serves to benefit our rivals and the rise of our signature adversaries, and that is signature adversary. That's China, isn't it? That's China. And also the extent to which the left has sold out. We talked about this at some length yesterday on American manufacturing. This is not just a lefty thing. The right has done this too in terms of the people who are in power. They sold this out to China a long time ago. This whole, we're going to make China more democratic. And instead, China has enriched itself on our backs as we've seen the great American middle class destroyed, and once great cities and towns hollowed out and become, just shells of their former greatness, covered in things like the fentanyl that came over from China. And so now you get this green energy push. It's not green at all. It's polluting. In fact, it's polluting at levels never seen before. But instead, what we do now is the pollution is done in China. It enriches China. It enriches China's workforce, and not us. It's at our expense. The only people getting rich are the people who are running the schemes. Joe Biden, Hunter. Yeah, they make money by selling us out. That's the whole story of the Biden family. Coming up, I want to talk about what could be the single dumbest show on television. And there's been so much competition through the years. I think Beavis and Butthead was built explicitly to be dumb. It was never as dumb as this one. That's ahead. We're just talking about what are the dumbest shows that have ever existed. Some of them are interesting. Naked and Afraid. Who are these crazy people who do these things? This is the Vince Coglianese Show. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Yeah, no, a lot of dumb shows through the years. Some of them meant to be dumb, but kind of amusing in the process, like The Simpsons, right? Like Homer Simpson's a famous dummy, but really funny. And of course, The Simpsons predict everything, so there's some utility there. The show Jackass, which, but those guys are just dumb. They're super stupid, but then they subject themselves to some of the dumbest possible things. But you can't resist sometimes. You kind of want to watch it. But what is the purpose of The View? What is the purpose of that television show? And look, we like making fun of it, and the clips get around, but one of the bizarre things about it is that, like, there's actually millions of people who watch it. Millions of people. And I don't know if this is they're all just sitting in waiting rooms and they accidentally get stuck on that channel, or they actually want to see what the women of The View are saying about current events. And one of the craziest things about that show is it seems like nobody does any research. Like, none of the panel even actually knows what they're talking about. You know that lady, Anna Navarro, who's on there? Wasn't she, Corey, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't she known as like a conservative, what do they call them? Strategists, up until, like, she was a campaign operative or something. Anna Navarro, she was known as a conservative campaign strategist. What? When was the last time she said anything remotely normal? Remotely, like, that approximated anything that would come out of a conservative's mouth? Never. She's never said anything. Never. And recently, she was saying on that show, she was saying that anytime she's near Ron DeSantis, she screams out like a dog, she says, like a dog hanging her head out the side of a car. She shouts out, "We say gay." And I was wondering, where did that come from? What in the world is she even talking about? She yells "We say gay" when she's in the vicinity of Ron DeSantis. she's not even talking about a real thing. The left has this theory that Ron DeSantis passed a law that banned people from saying the word gay or banned teachers from saying the word gay inside of classrooms. No such thing ever happened. That was just an invention. It is a complete conspiracy theory. It is completely made up, completely invented. It is a left-wing fever dream. But at The View, the message has never made its way through. So it leads to Anna Navarro saying stuff like this.
Oh.
Well, it wasn't me in New Hampshire screaming, "We say gay." Though I wish I would have. I try to do it every time I'm anywhere near Ron DeSantis or any of his people. I go around like a dog in Florida with my head outside of my car. "We say gay! We say gay! We say gay!"
And the seals. And the clapping seals. And the clapping seals in the audience. My thanks to the guys at Newsbusters. You heard their little audio sting at the end. This is nuts. This is so stupid. What? She's not even talking about a real thing. They're just making stuff up and then attacking the thing they made up. But I can't. I'm sorry. I just can't resist. The stupidity of it actually draws me to it. I'm a moth to the flame. So yesterday we had this story out of Axios that said that Joe Biden behind the scenes is constantly screaming at staff members because nobody's as impressive as he is. He thinks through the issues so much he's disappointed in his staff when they don't. So he screams at them. And so everybody was talking about this story yesterday, and a lot of people were getting it wrong, including on the right. People were saying, well, this is a sign of his dementia. No, the whole reason the story was leaked was to make it seem like he's with it, that he's the guy who's really calling the shots. That he's only getting angry because that's how talented he is. He's the guy. He's the only person in the room who truly knows the right questions to ask. And he's angry. He's disappointed in you when you don't live up to his high expectations. That was the story. But here's Joy Behar today. She said she gets turned. Oh, my God. I can't believe I'm about to say this. She gets turned on by Joe Biden screaming at his own staff.
I think it was just someone being angry make you turned on.
She's turned on by Biden's anger. I am too. I like it.
You like it?
I do.
Well, you have said that before.
I like that. I mean, he's such a mild-mannered, sweet guy.
But you know,
even Jill has probably been like, what are you talking about, Joy?
he's not. We've heard, listen, he has dropped more F-bombs than I have.
Uncle Joe has
over the years.
Uncle Joe has
over the
done
years.
that.
I mean, over the years, we've heard him off mic say stuff. I mean, he's a regular guy. I
He's
don't
a
know
regular
what she's
guy.
talking about.
Well, he doesn't-
She doesn't like this. She doesn't
I
like
don't think
that.
it's Whoopi that it's like anger management, and he needs anger management. He just blows off steam. It's white male privilege, it's called. You know, imagine if it's a woman or a black guy doing that.
What are they even talking about? How do they arrive at these conclusions? You know, it's like a half-digested left-wing talking point that she's regurgitating. She's like, he's getting angry and white privilege. What? What are you talking about, Joy Behar? You're the woman who dressed up in blackface. And you're sitting there talking about Joe Biden's white privilege. Why are you even talking about white privilege? What does that have to do with anything? Sarah Haynes, a co-host on that show, had this to say.
I'll give you a woman. Last night, putting my kids to bed, I was screaming so much. I turned to my husband and I said, my heart rate is like, I'm racing. And he's like, well, maybe it was the yelling. And I wake up to this headline of him getting mad. And I'm like, imagine waking up being President Biden. You're too old still. The economy sucks. The border's open. Your son's a mess. What about that grandchild you don't...
Yeah, I can't believe... I can't believe he would wake up to headlines that hold him accountable for his own decisions. She's reeling off a list of things that he deserves scrutiny for, and then says, like, it must be miserable to wake up to people just piling onto you.
President Biden, you're too old still. The economy sucks. The border's open. Your son's a mess. What about that grandchild you don't claim? He broke royal protocol with King Charles. Every way he turns, he does something wrong. He is allowed to get mad. I do it. Three
What?
small kids who do.
What kind of excuse making is this? And is she embarrassed about that at all? Is there any point that she looks back and she goes, man, I can't believe I really made all those excuses for Joe Biden. He is really a terrible president. I shouldn't have done that. This is going to come back to haunt me. No, that kind of soul searching never happens. Joy Behar. Didn't Joy Behar have like a show on one of the cable networks at one point, MSNBC or something? Like they thought she was a serious enough political commentator to give her a show. Here's what she has to say these days.
This whole notion that the economy is in bad shape, it's not.
No.
That's not true. And we are helping
No,
Ukraine.
but that's a headline you see.
The right wing in this country doesn't want to help Ukraine. I mean, I've never seen such a lack of patriotism in my
of
life.
what's his name?
But-
because the last guy.
I think it's important to note, though, perception matters with the economy, and like consumer prices have been up 15% over the last 2 years. If people go to the store,
Alyssa Farah, she's the to the extent that there is any voice on the panel that's quote conservative. It's not Anna Navarro.
In the world,
And
we have
doesn't
we have
change how-
overcome inflation
because
better
of the
than any
pandemic
country in
also.
Europe since the
It's also the
pandemic.
result
I'm
of
just
the
saying,
pandemic.
I think for people who are like struggling to afford to make ends meet, it's not good to just go out and say, oh, the economy is good. Look at how much
No, but,
better it is.
but then don't blame somebody who
Yeah,
shouldn't be getting the blame.
Since the beginning of time, get credit when it's good, and it's little their part, and they get
Oh
credit when
my
it's bad,
God!
and it's
The
not good.
excuse making is so embarrassing, and Alyssa is like, you know, kind of like meekly sitting in the corner, being like, well, it is legitimate to be concerned about the state of the economy. And then they just dogpile her. They're like, no, oh, well, all presidents get blamed. It's wrong. You shouldn't blame them. They have no control. And of course, they're attacking Trump all the time. Trump's not even president anymore. They spend all their time attacking him.
That pandemic that we haven't had over like in 100 years. So, so we have to put it into context.
Continued spending is a driver of inflation. It's not just from the pandemic era. But I had a broader point beyond the fact that the economy is not exactly
That was
golden.
supposed to be a joke, and it really held on here. Too long.
Was it a joke?
Yeah.
Was it Family Guy that did the picture of all the chickens sitting? They did like a little riff on like chickens all sitting around a desk. And they're like, now let's go to the View. And it's a bunch of chickens going. They're just all like, just you can't understand a word anybody's saying. They're screaming over each other. It is if you're ever in a situation where your voice is being heard over a television or over a radio, it is ideal not to interrupt other people on microphone. Because, and here's the reason, is if you are in a conversation at a dinner table, you can use your spatial reasoning to assess where the voice is coming from. This is why it's possible at a dinner table to have multiple conversations going on at once. You can stare at somebody, you can hear their voice, your brain can concentrate on it, and you can have, the sound waves are traveling in such a way that you can have that conversation. You may have to speak up a little bit because the room gets loud. But in radio and television, one of the obvious ways to do this is you don't step on the other person because all the noise comes out from the same spot to the listener. And there is no opportunity to like divide up the room based on sort of spatial assessments. Nope, all those sound waves are traveling through the same speaker. And on The View, it's just like all over each other. And then they start, as they so often do, they go back to Trump. They can't resist. They have to talk about Trump and how he's really the bad guy here. And I can't believe anybody's picking on Joe when Trump is alive.
I totally buy this reporting because we've seen it come out on the campaign trail. Like Biden can have a quick fuse temper. I don't want to see my politicians mad when they're running for re-election.
All right, so this is, once again, this is Alyssa. So she's supposed to be the conservative. And here she is kind of making a point where she says, you know, I'm just tired of all this anger. And it's both sides. Everybody does it. It's Biden. It's Trump.
I personally think Trump versus Biden is like the rematch from hell, and I want anyone to come in and be inspiring and hopeful.
Well, wasn't Trump
it's a job.
the most angry in the world?
From the Trump playbook. I don't want two white men shouting at each other for the next.
Most angry in the world. What kind of superlative is that? Wasn't Trump the most angry in the world? Sonny Austin said.
Year and a half until the
He doesn't shout when he does a president. He has not shouted.
What the white men shout as much as black men do.
What the reporting says is that he does tend to be very intense with his staffers and interrogate his staffers. And some of his staffers feel like if he doesn't pay you that attention, that means he doesn't think you're doing a good job. But I will say, had we heard that Obama was screaming and yelling at people, forget about it. And I do think that anger is a wasted
you would never have heard.
Yeah, and they go on to say that Obama, you know, if anybody accused him of yelling, if there was even a little story about Obama raising his voice, it would be a big racist problem. You're not allowed to criticize Obama because he's black. Well, technically half black, but the point is you're not allowed to criticize him. That would be racist. Could you imagine? And it's so funny. It's so insane, this fantasy world that they've built for themselves. And then, of course, the in-studio audience that claps like seals to all of this.
Had we heard that Obama was screaming and yelling at people, forget about it. And I do think that anger is a wasted...
Listen, you would never...
What is the conclusion that they're implying? Forget about it. If we had heard that Obama's... The conclusion is that, oh, it's a stereotype, and then they would attack him, and everyone would think it was real because they prejudge black people. Their entire argument is literally predicated on prejudgments. Their entire argument is about a fantasy world that they've just created where everybody is racist because Barack Obama was elected twice. What? America elected Obama 2 times in a row. And their conclusion is America's too racist for Obama to be president? What kind of logic is this?
I've heard it because, people spent 8 years in shock that he was actually president.
Exactly.
No. First of all, there were plenty of us who were really upset about that and didn't like to see our country going on the crapper. That's totally fine. But what Whoopi is implying here is that the whole country was in shock that Obama was... No, people voted. Obama won the Electoral College twice. How much... You've got to really hate your country to say that... To root for Obama, for him to become president twice, and then to say the voters suck. That's the Whoopi Goldberg position. Or whatever her real name is.
And that he was doing a good job.
You know, so if he had been yelling, you know, what they would say, if Biden starts to show that when he's outside that he's yelling, they're going to say, oh, he's an angry old man. If Obama had been yelling, they'd say, oh, he's an angry black man. I'm yelling, I'm an angry black man.
Who would say that? Who would say that? What is... Corey, am I right here? I'm trying to think. Like, I don't know a single person in my life who'd be like, oh, Obama was yelling? Typical angry black man. Like, I don't know a single person who would wield that opinion legitimately. That's ridiculous. Maybe that's a Whoopi Goldberg thing. Maybe that's straight out of her mind. That's just a case of projection going on. What in the world is she talking about? I'm more concerned with Obama trampling all over our civil liberties. I'm more concerned about that. That's the kind of thing that skin color really doesn't play a role in. That's just being upset about that. I'm more concerned about what happened throughout the Obama administration, the abuses of the various government agencies wielded against Obama's political opponents. I'm more concerned about that. I'm more concerned about the secrecy of that administration, deceiving the public, as the country got a whole lot worse under that guy, taking over 1/6 of the economy in the form of seizing control of the health industry. I'm more concerned about that stuff. Obama raising his voice? Come on. These people are silly.
Woman, what about you?
I was an angry white mom.
There you go.
I just think it's very rich that after a president who used to like to throw his dinner at the wall in the White House,
With
with ketchup, that steak with ketchup, that anyone would have the audacity
So there's this theory on the left. There's this claim that Trump would throw his ketchup-covered steak against the wall in the White House when he was angry. Now, this has not been in any way corroborated by anybody. This is just like, this is anti-Trump fan fiction. Some random anonymous source was credited with the claim. And so it's an article of faith on The View that Trump is a ketchup-covered steak-throwing lunatic, that he gets angry, he throws a steak against the wall. Which doesn't seem like Trump. I'd be shocked if Trump was wasting steak. That, you know, don't really become a billionaire by wasting the steak. Although I will say I have one judgment. I think I've told you this before about Trump and steak. I was in New Hampshire with a team from the Daily Caller during the 2016 primaries, first in the nation primary, and it was the night before the vote, and we were eating in a steakhouse. We were all snowed in, and most people weren't on the road, so we were one of the few tables actually in the steakhouse eating nice steaks. We were sitting there hanging out, and Donald Trump and his entire family walked into the restaurant and walked past our table, and they recognized some of the Daily Caller people at the table. That included Tucker Carlson, who was with us at the time. So Trump was like really fixated on our table. Hey guys, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. He started like making up stories about some of the reporters that were sitting at the table. He talked, Alex Pappas, my buddy, was there. And he was saying, Ivanka, this guy, he's a great reporter. He never sleeps. He's incredible. And he put some spin on the ball to make Alex seem like just amazing. And Alex, by the way, for what it's worth, he's a great guy. And I'm not, don't get me wrong, but I'd be surprised if Donald Trump had in-depth knowledge of Alex Pappas's reporting career. But he's talking him up like he's the greatest thing ever, which was nice. He was buttering up a reporter a little bit. And then Trump goes and sits down at his table, and he's there with the whole family. And they move a little more quickly on their meal than we did. They had places to be. They had a campaign, you see, going on. We were just kind of running our mouths, eating our food, having a good time. And so the Trump family left before we did, and we asked the waiter. I was like, "Hey, what did he order? What did he order? Oh, he ordered a steak. How did he order it? To what temperature? He ordered it well." And I was like, "No!" It was a sad moment. At that moment, I was like, really? Trump? Come on now, brother. You've got red meat eating people who's supporting you. If he's got a flaw, that's one of them, the well-done steak. I don't think ketchup never came up, though. That was never a part of the conversation, but it's an article of faith over there on the View that Trump is a guy who pours ketchup all over his steak and then throws it against the wall, which to me seems like a waste. Tomorrow on the Vince Coglianese Show, the fallout from Christopher Wray's testimony on the Hill. Congressman Ben Cline joins us. Don't miss it. The great one, Mark Levin, up next.